What's going on, everyone? This is Kevin here, coming at you with my hands-on and first impressions video of the Samsung Galaxy A14 4G LTE. So without further ado, let's get started. Now, the Galaxy A14 4G LTE was recently launched in March of 2023. Now, this phone does share many similarities to the Galaxy A14 5G, which was launched earlier in 2023. Now, of course, the major difference between that phone and this phone is the type of mobile network that is supported. However, there are some additional differences. Now, at this point in 2023, do you need a phone that actually has 5G support? Overall, I do think you can get by without 5G. However, in most situations, I do feel like if you can justify it, you should spend a little bit more money to get a 5G compatible smartphone, considering that that is pretty much the future. However, in return for this phone only offering 4G LTE, you are going to be saving a bit of money. So I suppose it's really up to you on which trade-off is worth it. Now, this phone is being offered in a variety of different regions, so definitely take a look at the various links in the video description to see the most up-to-date pricing and availability. And before I get too far into things here with the Galaxy A14, let's see what all comes included here in the box. So here's the box. You can see there's a picture of the phone right there. Then inside of the box, we have a SIM card removal tool. We have some literature. And we also have a double-sided USB-C cable for charging and data transfer. Now, with this device, we're getting a very large 6.6-inch display. Now, this display is PLS LCD. However, the refresh rate is limited at just 60 Hz. So we are starting to see with some lower-end budget smartphones, similar to this one, some higher refresh rates, such as 90 Hz, and even in some situations, 120 Hz, but we are still stuck with 60 Hz here. Now, overall, that doesn't really impact usability of the phone. It just doesn't make the display seem quite as premium. Now, on a more positive note, we are getting a 1080p display here with the phone. So that does make things nice and crisp and clear. And overall, I'm actually pretty impressed with how bright the display does get. Of course, with a lower end phone like this one, you really can't ask for too much, but in this situation, I am pretty impressed. Now, the PPI that we're getting is 400, kind of building upon that whole thing that I'm saying with the display being really crisp and clear and all the text being very easy to read. You don't really see too many pixels with this phone, which I do appreciate when looking at the display. Now, we do have a 20:9 display, so a more narrow but taller form factor, which does make this phone very similar to other Samsung A series devices that have launched this year. And then we are getting an 80.2% screen to body ratio. So pretty slim bezels all throughout, especially for a lower end phone. However, the bottom bezel is a little bit thicker than the other bezels. Now, this phone does feature a water drop notch up top, and in that notch is a 13 megapixel front facing camera. Now, stay tuned for my full review of this phone coming out soon here on the channel, as I'll be showing you a variety of different photo and video samples from all the various cameras on this device. Now, internally, this phone is being offered in multiple storage configurations, and there might even be more options available in the future as well, but at least at the time of me recording this video, this phone is being offered in 64 or 128 gigabytes of storage, along with microSD card expansion compatibility. Now, this version of the phone happens to actually have 128 gigs, so that is really impressive. That's a ton of space, especially for a lower end phone. Now, the predecessor to this phone, the Galaxy A13 4G LTE, was actually launched officially in the US, and that phone actually only offered 32 gigabytes of storage. So I do have a feeling that if the Galaxy A14 4G LTE does actually get launched officially in the US, we probably will be seeing a 32 gigabyte version, because especially in the US, they tend to give lower end phones the least amount of storage possible. Now, unfortunately, with the Galaxy A14, there's no wireless charging. However, I do expect that to not be present on a lower end phone like this one. Now, we do have a fingerprint sensor mounted on the power button, so let's give that a try right now. And that's very fast and responsive. Let's try that one more time. So there we go, that works really well. Now, in addition to the fingerprint sensor, this phone also supports face unlock. So I do appreciate that we have multiple methods here for accessing the device. Now, taking a look at the back of the phone, we are getting a triple camera setup with a 50 megapixel main camera, a 5 megapixel ultra wide angle camera, and a 2 megapixel macro camera for close-up images. Now, here's how things look on the camera app. This is with the main rear camera right now. So I was actually very surprised to see that this phone even has an ultra wide camera, considering that the A14 5G does not. So with the A14 5G, instead of having the ultra-wide camera, we just get a dedicated depth sensing camera. However, the depth sensing camera is combined here with the ultra-wide camera so that we're basically able to get additional functionalities out of that camera. Of course, the entire camera sensor and all that is different as well, but the point is that we're getting the same number of cameras with the A14 4G LTE compared to the 5G counterpart. However, we're actually getting additional camera features. So that is very impressive and honestly a bit surprising to see. But then from there, you can go over to the More tab and you can access the macro camera to get very close up so you can see things are nice and clear there. We can exit out of there, then go to portrait mode to get those nice blurred out backgrounds. And there is a blur adjustment slider. Then flip around to the front facing camera, we can take portrait selfies. So there's me right there. You can even crop out a little bit for a group selfie, or if you want to, you can take standard selfies too. So definitely a lot of different options here. And then video recording with this phone does max out at 1080p for both the front and rear cameras. Now internally with this device, we're getting 4 gigabytes of RAM, and based on which region you buy this phone in, there are 2 different options for the processor. So one option is the Samsung Exynos 850, and the other option is the MediaTek Helio G80. Now, for me, this phone does have the Exynos 850, so I can really only go off my experience with that processor. However, I'll say overall, this is a pretty slow device. Now, it'll get the job done for phone calls, text messages, kind of the fundamentals of a smartphone, but beyond that, I do think you will get pretty frustrated with this phone being a bit on the slower side. Now, I did run a benchmark test with this phone, and here are the results I got from that test. Essentially, I got a single core score of 207 and a multi-core score of 822. So what I recommend doing is running this test on your current phone, and then compare your scores to these scores to get a better idea of how the A14 4G LTE compares to your current device. But overall, I'm not overly impressed by these scores, and it does seem to pretty much mimic my experience with the actual phone itself. Now, for many people, this phone will still be adequate, especially if you're looking for a phone to accomplish pretty much the bare minimum tasks. Now, as I use this phone more, I'll have a better idea of all of its various capabilities, but I would say that probably the strong point with this phone so far is the camera capabilities that we're getting here, and I suppose as well, it is pretty impressive with how bright and clear the display does get. So thankfully, those 2 functionalities won't really be limited by the phone's actual processing power, but for other things like general usability of the device, you could get a bit frustrated with it being a bit on the slower side. Now, as far as battery capacity goes, with this phone, we're getting a very large 5,000 milliamp hour internal battery, and we are getting 15 watt fast charging compatibility. So it is very nice that we're getting such a large battery here with the A14 4G LTE, but being able to recharge that battery at a pretty fast rate is another added bonus, because you certainly don't want to be sitting around all day waiting for your phone to recharge. Now, the software that we're getting here is Android 13, paired up with Samsung's One UI 5. Now, overall, I'm a big fan of both stock Android and Samsung's approach to Android, so I do feel like with One UI, Samsung does add a lot of additional bonus features to kind of make what's already great about Android even better. But that really comes down to personal preference. In addition to that, if you've used a Samsung phone anytime recently, and especially in the last several years, the experience of using this phone will be very familiar to you. So there won't be much of a learning curve. Now, I suppose this will be different based on which region you're in, but this version of the A14 4G LTE does actually support NFC. So I can use NFC for tap and pay using services such as Samsung Pay. So that is pretty impressive, and I'm surprised that we're even getting that here. I know for me at least, NFC is a very useful feature with any phone that I have that does support it. But now that I've gone over a lot of the various specifications and features of the Galaxy A14, let's take a closer look at the actual phone itself as far as the hardware goes. Now, the first thing is, I'm a big fan of this color. I have a feeling though that if this phone is launched in the US, we probably won't be getting very many interesting colors, which just seems to be a reality with lower end Samsung phones, but I am glad that in certain regions we are getting cool colors like green. Now, this phone is made completely of plastic, besides the display, which is made of glass. However, despite that, I feel like the phone actually looks really nice, and it does feel of decent quality. It certainly doesn't feel cheap by any means. Now, taking a look at the left side of the phone, we have the slot for the micro SD card and SIM card. Then on the right side, we have volume up, volume down, and also the power button, which doubles as the fingerprint sensor. Then up top here, we have the noise canceling microphone. And then on the bottom of the phone, we have the 3.5mm headphone jack, microphone, USB-C port for charging and data transfer, and we have the speaker. And then on the back of the phone, I'm a big fan of this material. overall, I like how it doesn't really pick up any fingerprints, but it is made of plastic, of course. We have the triple camera setup here, flash, and Samsung logo. But overall, I think this is a very nice looking smartphone, despite the fact that it is meant to be very low end. So overall, I'm really excited about the Samsung Galaxy A14 4G LTE. And most importantly, I really want to know what your thoughts are about this device. So definitely let me know in the comments section below. But I hope you liked the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. But this is Kevin here, and I will see you in the next one. Take care and have a great rest of your day.